Today, our special guest is Melissa DeClue from Amplify Missions, and she's here to talk to us about a very important topic, and that's increasing our donor engagement for our donor retention. So with that, let's welcome Melissa. Welcome, Melissa. I absolutely love what Amplify Missions is doing on Instagram. So I'm going to link all of that below in the description because you guys are a valuable resource for nonprofits. So do we want to just start with a shameless plug and tell us a little bit about what you guys do and who you are?
I'm Melissa DeClue. I'm the founder and Chief Engagement Strategist for Amplify Missions. I focus on donor engagement with new and existing nonprofits. So a lot of that comes with coaching and empowering them to utilize these transformative donor experiences and community-centric strategies so that we can engage and retain our donors a lot better.
That is one of my most favorite parts of the job is those relationships that we build.
So I've been in donor relations stewardship the majority of my career. And so I have really enjoyed that part of what I do is building relationships, maintaining them, really understanding the science and really the non-science of it, which is just getting to know people and really getting to the heart of why they give.
Well, do you have a little bit of an introduction for us on what we're going to talk about today and get us kicked off right?
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about donor engagement for donor retention. And a lot of that is built off these 5 guiding principles for donor engagement that I put together. And I put these together to really talk about how we have this way with donor engagement that really encompasses every single interaction that our organization makes with the donor and starts to think about how each of those interactions can impact their relationship with us. And not only what your development officers are doing, what your executive director or president is doing of your organization, but also all of our communications that are going out from multiple facets. So I've worked with nonprofits, but I've also worked in higher education. So understanding the full complexities of what those interactions means is something that I just really enjoy digging into. So as far as my 5 guiding principles, it really focuses on receipt, thank you, which is our acknowledgement piece, access, impact, and invite. And all of those sound very basic, but it really is breaking down what are the policies and procedures, the documentation, the processes that we put into place in order to best make sure that we're communicating our donors effectively in these areas.
Yeah, I'm shocked by how many times I've made a donation and 6 months down the road, I get a thank you letter with the tax receipt and no.
Yeah, I know it is the most frustrating thing to get a receipt and it just tell me a basic message of thank you for your transaction and then gives me transactional detail. And I'm like, that's it. And then I never get an acknowledgement later. There are gifts that I made at the end of the year, and we're getting to that end of the year point again. There's gifts that I made at the end of the year last year that I still have not received an acknowledgement letter for. So when we're thinking about donor retention, here's this opportunity for you to retain me as a donor for the next year so that when you start, knocking out my inbox this year, you had that moment initially to respond and to interact with me in a very special way so that I spent this entire 2022 learning about your organization. So that when you came back to me at the end of the year and said, hey, Melissa, I want you to give again. I'm ready. I'm prepared. I know what I'm supposed to do. I've received my receipt. I've been acknowledged. You probably invited me to volunteer or get excited about something you have going on. And you've given me so much access so that now I'm prepared to make another gift. And if you don't do that, I'm lost. And when you ask me to give, I'm like, why? I don't know why. So That's why I feel like this is such a great focus area. If anyone is starting to think about, okay, we attained all these new donors last year or the previous year, what do we do now? Look at those existing donors and figure out how you can grow those relationships and get to know them more, and start to tailor your messaging, um, your just how you're connecting with them, and make sure that you're personalizing it in a way that speaks to how they're interacting with your organization.
Yeah. Yeah. I did a piece on generational fundraising and how each of the generations want to be acknowledged differently and they want to be connected with differently. And I know a lot of organizations aren't really segmenting their donors in that way and saying, okay, well, here's what we can do for our boomers, but here's what we can do for our young donors. And
Exactly. And even sometimes when we're thinking about our boomers, I did a presentation in New York once and let them know that even our boomer generation they're using their cell phones. They want that digital communication. But they're also not too shy away from a handwritten card. And even me, not in the boomer generation, as a millennial, I love handwritten cards. I keep a stack of handwritten cards that I've been provided from organizations and even donors who responded to something I sent them. They sent me a note back, and I hold on to them because I think it's something so special when someone takes the time to think about me and write a letter or write a note and tell me how much they value our connection.
yeah, no, it's impactful. So are you going to take us through the 5 steps in just a little bit more detail?
Yes. So when it comes to just getting it started, so whenever I talk about these 5 guiding principles, it starts off with receipt. So it's the understanding that a transaction has already been made, and we are starting to think about, okay, what's going to happen next? So like we talked about, is taking that generic receipt and saying, okay, we need to also provide this brief message of gratitude. We need to let the donor know exactly what their transaction did. So part of that retention piece is, if you have this monthly donor program, or if you have this, where you've established pledges and pledge payments and things like that, this is the opportunity to make sure that you put some of that information on the receipt. So then if I say I have a pledge balance, if we're going to talk about that particular area, then I can have that signal as a donor of like, oh, okay, I still have X amount of dollars left to pay on my pledge. Or yes, I did just make a pledge. And these are ways that you can make sure that you're able to communicate the next communication or interaction with them in a way that, okay, this is what I've already done. And this is the information that I've provided that I know they have. And the brief message of gratitude, including pictures or whatever you have in your toolbox, those are really impactful because it's just a delight to see someone give you a bright receipt versus someone who just gives you a regular transaction, as if I went to the grocery store and bought some groceries and this was it. So there's something very transactional about that. But when we're talking about how we're going to engage and retain this donor over time, it has to have that personal touch to it that just screams, I'm excited about this relationship that we're going to build over time. So after the receipt piece, then we get into the acknowledgements. And that's, like you said, this is the opportunity for us to, to feel that gratitude of something that you've given. And you have this time frame where you can forget. So if you wait too long, if you're waiting like, oh, we'll just thank them 6 months from now, that's too long. That's too far. We have this kind of donor relations silent rule of thumb to at least provide some type of engagement within 3 months. So I wouldn't say wait 3 months, have something else to do, but definitely do not let it go past 3 months before you actually reach back out to them in some way. So with acknowledgements, best practices is within 7 to 10 business days, or within a week. You should somehow acknowledge this donor. I've encouraged a lot of my clients to make sure they incorporate pictures and tell a story, tell them exactly who you are, kind of that kind of roll out the red carpet about your organization and letting people know who you are and how excited you are for what you're going to do next, because you know that there's a next step. And sometimes I put everything into a cycle with these guiding principles because I want people to understand that each of these are opportunities for someone to give. Because I feel like if I was to get this really powerful acknowledgement letter, I would kind of sit there and think, man, I should do this again. And I would go online and make my donation again. And then moving into that access piece, that really starts to think about, okay, how do we broaden our relationship with this donor? So now we're starting to open the floodgates a little bit and say, okay, this is what we do. This is who we are. Things that I've advised or talked to some nonprofits about are the new donor welcome packets. So these are, and I say welcome packets as a paper, but mostly digital onboarding. And that access, it's opening up and saying, this is what's going to happen now that you're involved with us. So we're going to tell you about whatever we're advocating for in our community. We're going to tell you a little bit more about who our founder is, our executive director, whoever, do some storytelling, but just really step outside of social media and say, I'm going to grow this access with this donor. And once we get through access, then we're going to get to impact. And this is the really power piece to me, because this can be done through annual reports that some organizations will put together, or this is a moment to highlight someone who might have been a major gift donor or someone who has really strong loyalty with your organization, to say, like, exactly, this is what your journey has looked like with us. And, or if you're sending out to a mass audience, this is the impact you have collectively made this year. Or giving them that opportunity to see that impact visually. These are all great ways to share and show impact and gratitude, and just how important these donors are, and just this additional engaging piece with them. So then it moves into invite, and invite is not just about inviting to an event, a gala, a golf tournament. We've all done our share of these fundraising events. It is more so about inviting them to an experience with your organization. So just to give an example, whenever I worked in higher education, one of the inviting experiences I did is we had a piano festival that was already going on in the area. And these were donors that were extremely loyal to the university. And I just invited them to the piano festival. It's not an event that I was putting on, but it was like, hey, you told me that you're interested in this thing that we do, and I want to make sure you feel connected to this area. And so they came to the festival. They came to the piano festival, and they felt amazing about it. They enjoyed the experience. For some of the donors, they became givers within that area of the university. One person started taking piano lessons with one of the professors. It just led to all of these different opportunities that they just didn't know they could take advantage of with the organization. And I think about moments like that, and that's how we invite people in, because you've been sitting on as a donor on the outside, you've been making your gift, and you've been talking to probably a gift officer or whoever. And here's this opportunity for you to step into the audience, or step into the closet. I had a donor once that was giving to a coat closet. And so she was so happy to be able to take the coats physically to the place and be provided a tour of the area and be able to physically give a coat to someone. And it just really made a difference for her. So that's what I mean is invite, which is such a bigger in-depth thing than this.
I was working with a treatment center, and we would bring people in to have lunch. So they would come and have lunch with all the guys. You'd see this big corporate donor sitting in his suit right beside this tatted up biker guy who just got out of the penitentiary, having this amazing conversation about life and what recovery means to him. And it would bring tears to my eyes to see it. And theirs too. They felt so connected afterwards and could see what we were doing.
Exactly. And like I said, these all become opportunities for the donor to feel like they have an in-depth relationship, and to once again have them give an opportunity for them to give again. And it makes it a lot easier and a lot more softer ask whenever the organization itself or the gift officer goes back out to that person and says, hey, I hope you enjoyed whatever, you did or whatever we worked on together. I want to talk to you about this transformative gift that you can make with our organization. And at that point in time, it's a no-brainer at that time for the donor to sit and say, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's figure out what we can do. And that's how donor engagement works. And these are things that just happen throughout the year. And then it just keeps going. And it's such a great opportunity. I think that so many organizations just scratched the surface.
Yeah. I've been there with those organizations and seen how it's quite often a lack of resources. You're so busy working on funding, but when we take the time and we schedule it out and we manage our cultivation and our stewardship and our recognition, it sets us up for better results later anyway.
It does. And what I enjoy the most with Amplify Missions is starting to work with the starter nonprofits. So we're starting them off right away by putting some of these groundwork into place, these frameworks. And we're saying, okay, like this is how you start to create and cultivate these relationships right away. Kind of breaking down some of the more rigid previous ways of fundraising, because we're learning that it doesn't always work for every single organization. And we're saying this is how you can build relationships. So I've watched my new nonprofits start building relationships. They'll call me when they'll get these new meetings and they're like, Melissa, I have a meeting. I have a donor meeting. And I'm like, yes, this is exciting. Let's keep it going. And then watching them grow from a donor base of just 10 to 20 to 50. And those are things that are huge for them. And if they had an existing donor base, watching them see their revenue grow from those existing relationships and just being able to just make a greater impact with those that they're serving. So it really is such a great art for organizations to take on. And I understand lack of resources. I got so used to hearing somebody say, hey, Melissa, we're cutting your budget this month. We're cutting your budget this year. I hope you can work with half of this. Hey, we're cutting your budget 11%. Good luck. That I think we can always find creative ways to really connect with our donors and build these relationships. It really just is a mindset shift of how we're going to prioritize what our ultimate goal is.
Well, is there anything that you wanted to mention that we haven't covered? Anything in closing?
Yeah, so I always like to provide tips. I'm all about sharing. I believe sharing is caring. And when it comes to donor relations stewardship, we're a huge advocates of just sharing information and sharing different tips and tricks that can make people successful. So if you're thinking about wanting to do actions within donor engagement, the first place you want to look is start to think about your CRM. Look at it and see like, hey, what have I put into place with my CRM? Am I using a customer relations management system? Or am I just using something that is just processing my donations? Because if you want to start donor engagement, you want to start looking at your database, looking at what solution you're using to manage your volunteers, your donors, your prospects, and everyone who's engaging with your organization. Secondly, you want to start thinking about what are things that we can do throughout the entire year. And like we talked about, that segmenting is going to be so important when you're thinking about retaining your donors and doing these different donor engagement strategies. It requires you to segment by interest or things that speak more to who they are. And also just being willing to build these relationships. Don't let anybody fall off. Just being excited to connect and meet every single day with excitement. And that's how I've seen success happen with organizations, and I've seen success happen for myself.
Well, great. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate you doing this. This is such a huge part of fundraising that I do think we just quite often miss.
Unfortunately, we continue to miss it, but it's okay. There are so many great tools and resources out there. For myself, I have free templates and webinars that I have on my website, so feel free to check those out. And then also you have huge, robust tools like ThankView and other areas that are really dedicating to this realm of donor engagement and really working with nonprofits to improve it.
Okay, well, thank you again, Melissa.
You're welcome. Thank you.